welcome, a warm welcome to this first virtual event in connection with the LDC5. My office, the OHRLLS, is excited at this opportunity to engage with the private sector, and in particular, our principal partner, Microsoft, regarding our work on behalf of the least developed countries. I'm quite sure that you've heard the oft-repeated phrase with the turmoil and disruption that has been brought about by this pandemic, i.e., we are living in unprecedented times. But think about it, for the LDCs, they are no stranger to turmoil and disruption. The global pandemic has served as a spotlight to highlight pre-existing fractures in our global systems. And in these countries, the world's most vulnerable countries, it is clear that they lack the resilience to withstand the crisis. The 5th UN Conference for the LDCs presents, I think, an opportunity to build resilience to the pandemic and make a consequential difference in the lives of over 1 billion people over the course of the next decade. I believe the economic potential of these young, vibrant countries is both vast and often overlooked by the private sector. And that is what we want to start putting right starting today. We want the private sector to be fully engaged in the process as partners, not just at the conference in Doha, but in the decade that follows. Despite the tough challenges facing the LDCs, which have been exacerbated by the pandemic, I firmly believe that it is an opportunity, not necessity or a sense of duty, an opportunity that can drive the engagement of the private sector at LDC5. LDCs are a natural resource treasure house. They have vast arable land for agriculture and large rainforests that play a crucial role in combating global warming. You'll find biodiversity, abundant renewable energy resources, enormous reserves of fresh water and marine and coastal resources. Equitably harnessed and properly managed, these resources can yield high returns on investments for the benefit of the LDCs and, in fact, the global economy. However, these natural resources should be sustainably harnessed and in tandem with the long-term development of human capital. On the demand side, LDC working age populations will increase by 16 million people per year. By 2050, 1 in 4 young people worldwide will live in an LDC. These are young, vibrant countries with the potential to drive global growth in the coming decades. LDCs also qualify for preferential treatment in world trade, including duty-free and quota-free market access. So yes, we have a duty to raise our ambitions for these countries, but there is abundant opportunity as well. We want to start that dialogue today and to consider what else we need to be doing to engage the private sector in the weeks ahead as we build momentum towards Doha. How can we turn small and medium-sized enterprises, which represent 80% of the LDC's economies, into engines of growth? How can innovative financing models ignite the energy transition in LDCs? And how can we increase the pace of digital upskilling and bridge the gender gap in digital skills? These are just some of the questions that we want your help in answering. Just this morning, we had the first meeting of the advisory group that my office has launched to support private sector participation as we prepare for Doha. In a moment, you will hear from the advisory group members themselves, so I won't take up too much more of your time. I just want to remind colleagues that we host a 3-day private sector forum at LDC5 Conference, which we expect will be every bit as meaningful and outcome-focused as the full conference agenda. And let me just finally extend a special thanks to John Prank from Microsoft partnering with my office. Without further ado now, it is my pleasure to give the floor to John to give his remarks and to introduce the panel. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Courtney. And it's exciting today to be launching the business track after months of preparation and discussion. And we very much look forward to a process up to Doha and beyond. We believe that the private sector and entrepreneurship can be a powerful, positive influence for the development and creation of opportunities for the 1.1 billion people in the 46 LDC countries. Microsoft, our corporate mission statement is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And so for us, the opportunity to try to contribute to the empowerment and success of the 1.1 billion people is a tremendous opportunity. I think the private sector brings some unique perspectives to the challenges of creating economic development. To be honest, I think we need some new models for doing this. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to have discussion and co-creation and embracing successful models that people have been innovating. Ultimately, it's important to invest not just the financial capital, but building the human capital of these countries with the talent and the opportunities that the people have. At Microsoft, of course, we're very focused on connectivity as being a foundation for so much economic progress. And with connectivity, we can scale skilling and public services that will make positive differences in the lives of people. We've brought together for today's session people from several business groups as well as UN groups to present and share some first thoughts. We do very much want people to get involved in this conference, and throughout this conference, we'll be providing more information about how you can and your business can become more engaged in the road to Doha. I'd like to begin introductions by giving the floor to Mr. Nick Rudnick, who's the Group CEO of Liquid Intelligent Technologies. Nick, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I think one of the great challenges of creating livelihood in least developed countries is also linked to its opportunity. And in talking to a colleague the other day, I was looking at the fact that in the United States, there are 10 cities that have a population of 1 million or more. In Africa, there are 54 cities that have a population of 1 million and more. And 2 of those cities are just about to hit 15 million in population, Kinshasa and Lagos, both about 1 million people each. So this population is an enormous resource. It is a population made up of lots of young people who are able to drive entrepreneurship when given access to the tools of connectivity and technology, and are able to utilize these technologies to advance their own entrepreneurship. I think the way that we've done things in the past will no longer work in the future. There are no number of factories or businesses or distributorships that could be created by foreign direct investment that could hope to give employment to these numbers of people who are growing up and looking for education across the continent. But through the applicability of technology, through the delivery of capital, which is available at an entrepreneurship level, I think that there's enormous scope for the young people of the continent and of least developed countries across the world to create new businesses and new ways of doing things, and thereby creating new ways of advancing their own livelihoods. And I think that's what we will, hopefully look to deliver and find some very practical solutions for when we get to Doha.
Thank you, Nick. Our next speaker is Ms. Tara Nathan, Executive Vice President, Humanitarian and Development at MasterCard. Tara?
Hi, John. Thank you for including MasterCard in this event. I think we're excited to participate. Maybe just a couple words about MasterCard and our interest in this space. Many people think that we're a credit card company, and actually what we are is a digital company. We lay digital infrastructure around in countries and markets around the globe that enable commerce to happen. We connect digitally banks and governments and merchants and institutions, around the globe, but then in these local markets. At MasterCard, one of the things that we're very passionate about is ensuring that our capabilities as a digital transaction, digital technology, digital infrastructure company extends to actually provide services to the most marginalized communities. And so that includes actually going into the LDCs. What we've done over the course of the past 5 to 10 years is innovate our technology to ensure that those digital rails can reach the farm gate, to the smallholder farmer, to the marginalized mother who wants to provide vaccination capabilities for her child. In order for that to happen, the thing that we sort of see and the thing that we try to emphasize is commercial sustainability. How can we do so commercially in partnering with local businesses, with local ag techs, with health techs, with fintechs, with banks, to ensure that services sort of go down, right down to the marginalized individual. We're very excited for this convening and for this effort to try and figure out how we bring together more private sector actors to do that. Because at the end of the day, I think what we see is digital payments capabilities, digital transaction capabilities have the ability to not just raise incomes at the individual farmer level, it does so at the community level and ultimately drives GDP growth, at the country level. So thank you again for including us.
Thank you, Tara. And the sustainability of projects is absolutely crucial. And so trying to figure out development projects that will continue and thrive, it's tremendous that you're focused on that. And I think it's a really important principle that we all keep in mind as we move forward. Our next speaker is Mr. Maximo Torero-Cullen, the Chief Economist of the Food and Agriculture Organization. Maximo?
Thank you very much, John. And let me set up front that we at FAO recognize that the private sector play an important role in working towards long-term solutions in support of LDCs. And closer collaboration with the private sector can provide innovative opportunities and pathways to mobilize investment, financing, and technical expertise to support national strategies to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Essentially, our goal right now is to look at least developed countries and trying to figure out what is needed to be done to be able to achieve the agri-food system transformation that is required, given that most of the poverty is in rural areas, and if it is in the rural areas, agriculture plays a crucial role. Agricultural sector, from farmers, producer associations, all of them are private operators in different sizes and so on. But there is also a significant need of investment from the private sector. And in many cases, we are not aware, and the private sector is not necessarily aware of the potential demand that exists in those areas. So what we are trying to do is trying to create a catalytic system of information using territorial approaches that could help to provide the information that the private sector could need to be able to make a decision if there are areas where they should enter in their own investment, as they will normally do, because the returns could be high. We're talking of areas that you can do $7 per day per capita, relative to the 1.5 that they do today, because of the potential that they have. Or if they need to enter through certain type of de-risking mechanism, in which the governments also will have to play a role, or the IFIs that support the public sector have to play a role to create that de-risking. The important thing for us is how we can create also competition of the private sector. So rather than bringing one company or two companies, how we can create within an area and within a sector that we want to operate, how we can bring a critical amount of private sector companies that could be interested in solving that problem. And as a result of that, try to identify the real level of de-risking that is needed, or if no de-risking is needed. This approach was followed 1 decade ago with cellular phones, especially through the institutions that were created through the privatization of telecommunications for promoting cellular phones in rural areas. And it worked extremely well, and we believe at FAO that that's the way in which we can attract companies, especially to sectors where you have micro, small, and medium enterprises, and in small development islands where things could be difficult, and where it could be that by providing this information, we can make it a lot more attractive, and therefore, as a result of that, attract more private sector investment, which is central today, because the gap of investment that we have for the rural areas is significantly big. We know that just increasing $50 billion a year for the next years until the 2030, plus what the government should invest in similar levels, could create mobility out of poverty and could make us achieve SDG2. But that amount of resources won't come from ODA. The private sector has to play a role here, but we also believe that there is a need to bring information to reduce the risk and to show the potential returns that it could bring into their own activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Maximo. And at the conference, we'll have 5 tracks on sustainable agriculture, sustainable energy, sustainable tourism, ICT, and climate change. And so I think the agricultural sector issues are especially fascinating, and since they create such a large part of employment in the LDC countries in a critical way to improve the lives of people. Our next speaker is Ms. Louise James, Managing Director and Global Co-Lead of Accenture Development Partnerships. Louise.
Great. Thank you, John, and great to be here today. And we've heard already what the huge opportunity there is. And I think what's exciting about the opportunity at the moment is that actually so much needs to be done, but so much the way that COVID has impacted today means that actually we are now looking at LDCs in a very different way, because supply chains of companies around the world have realized how interconnected they are, and that actually COVID has really shown this interwoven nature of the globe that we live in at this moment in time. So we absolutely need to think about not just our own organization, but in our case, our clients' supply chains and how they extend back along into the LDCs. One example that we've seen recently where we've been focused on a big partnership is around the garment sector. And the UK government has looked at the opportunities for business partnerships to really address the global goals. Now, we've seen obviously how COVID has disrupted the garment sector in Bangladesh, and that has had a significant impact on the livelihoods of the garment workers. And what we've seen is this opportunity for the different sectors to come together to really support the garment industry. So we have civil society at the table, we have the local suppliers at the table, all the factories at the tables, the retailers from the UK, say how do we actually support the workforce and catalyze investments so that actually we mitigate some of the impacts of the pandemic. If we look at the GDP per capita growth in the LDCs, actually this was outstripping countries like my own country, the UK, prior to the pandemic. But there is a real risk here that a lot of this progress is set back. And actually, how do we create an environment that is right for investment, as being said earlier? Actually, we do need to think about COVID and the vaccinations, and we're working on a partnership within the LDCs where we are bringing the private sector to the table, along with government, along with other actors, to really support vaccination. And that is seen as being absolutely critical in terms of getting the economy going again. And actually what is fascinating to see and encouraging is, of course, actually the private sector are leading. They are there saying, we want to get the economies back on track. So in DRC, we're seeing the different sectors coming together, whether it's transportation, whether it's tourism, whether it's mining, saying, let's invest, work with others and really create a healthy, resilient, vibrant community so that we can get the economic progress back on track. The final thing I'll say is we've talked about digital solutions, and we're firm believers in the importance of connectivity and digital solutions as a real enabler in markets to create resilience. If you couple that with blended financing, those are the tools we need to create the right enabling environment. But actually, we also know that we need to take a consumer mindset. We need to think about sustainable businesses and how do we actually put the consumer at the heart of products and services that are being developed, so that the demand is there for the products and services and that they really can be there at scale for the long term. So with that, John, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Louise. On the agenda, the next speaker is Lisa Corbeil, but I got a chat message that there may be some technical challenges there. And so I'm not sure if it's going to be Lisa or Peter Robinson, who's director of the Joint SDG Fund, or Peter Robinson, president and CEO of the U.S. Council for International Business. So conference organizers, please take us forward. Peter.
Thank you very much, John. Lisa is now here as a panelist, so over to her.
Apologies for that, John. And colleagues, good morning. Wonderful to see everyone here today. A few words about the UN's Joint SDG Fund, created by the General Assembly to really de-risk and to take the small and medium enterprises to scale, as so many previous speakers have already said. We are capitalized currently by generous member states to 275 million. And the goal of the fund is twofold in this arena of SDG investments. The first one is around building the ecosystem. And this is really to target digitalization, blended financing, the support to SMEs. And we're doing that through $59 million across 69 countries, of which 23 are least developed countries. So that's 36.7 million currently moving through government counterparts, moving with ministries, parliaments, all the critical partners, including private sector at country level, to really understand what the roadblocks are to bring in more foreign direct investment. So that's exciting efforts underway. A lot of that being tweaked and adjusted given the COVID pandemic, but essentially looking at not only the socioeconomic response to the pandemic, but also looking ahead to how to finance the SDGs. So a lot of exciting conversations happening there that I think could be showcased at Doha. But even more exciting, I believe, is how we're actually going in as first loss investors. The UN is part of de-risking actual deals, actual structured investments at country level. We received 155 proposals when we did a call globally across the UN system. 58 of those proposals were from LDCs. So you're seeing a tremendous outcry for support to investments in LDCs who are often missed. So again, I think Doha being this platform we can really utilize. And I want to showcase one that's already actually on the ground and moving, which is Malawi. Malawi is the first structured blended finance vehicle in the country to attract investors. Our fund is putting in the first $8 million towards a $35 million close to gather and channel resources specifically to small scale agricultural producers. So this is allowing them to become more efficient, create more jobs, women and youth being involved, producing more food for the country. It's a concrete example of how the private sector can capitalize on decades of work by the United Nations, and FAO and the UN Capital Development Fund are leading that work on the ground. So we have this generous support from our donors. The Joint SDG Fund comes in, contributes that first loss, de-risks the mezzanine level that's now open to commercial investors. And again, I mentioned the $35 million target. So this is no longer theory, colleagues. This is an example now of what we want to replicate again and again and again. And we want the voices on this call and beyond to really help us reach those institutional investors to make this a reality. Thank you so much.
Lisa, congratulations. That's really exciting development, and it's a great example of I think how the multi-stakeholder model of government, international, and private sector can work together in the 21st century. So thank you. Our next speaker is Peter Robinson, who's president and CEO of the U.S. Council for International Business. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, John. USCIB is excited to be here. And I also want to thank Undersecretary General Rattray for his vision and leadership on this initiative. Through our organizational affiliation to the International Chamber of Commerce, International Organization of Employers, and Business at OECD, we're part of influential and active networks that include companies of all sizes, as well as business and employers groups and LDCs. Our members are integrally linked to LDCs through supply and value chains that provide avenues to create employment, market access, and investment opportunities in those countries. And our members are greatly concerned with the current economic and investment picture and the impact of the pandemic on LDCs in particular, where there's scant access to vaccines and to the resources necessary for sustainable recovery. I was at an UNCTAD conference on investment last week where we were looking at statistics showing the global foreign direct investment flows decreased by 38% in 2020. And although OECD expects most of the resource-rich developed countries to recover by the end of this year, UNCTAD is reporting that recovery in many LDCs might take more than 5 years. And while the solution to pandemic recovery is certainly multifaceted, foreign direct investment is a key component. And it's now more important than ever that organizations like the UN and its member governments and we together strive to provide the necessary welcoming environment for FDI in quality industry and infrastructure projects that help with pandemic relief and sustainable economic growth for LDCs. And that's going to include developing enabling environments for urgently needed investment in all the 5 tracks that have been mentioned so far. But I'm thinking particularly of health infrastructure, as well as life sciences and health innovation, green energy transitions, and circular economy to help the world achieve the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and the information and communications technology sector to bridge the digital divide and keep people and businesses connected and productive during future challenges like pandemics. So we're looking forward to exploring these opportunities at UN-LDC5 and see that the business forum we're launching is a prime example of what we have championed for some time, what we call inclusive multilateralism, meaning all stakeholders around the table, and would hope to demonstrate in this group how multi-stakeholder business-facing approaches can help increase meaningful development and business impact for society and sustainability via international cooperation through sharing of best practices, frank dialogue between all the parties, and creating an ongoing dialogue between global business and business and LDCs. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Our next speaker is Ms. Shea Gopal, the International Organization of Employers, and she is the Special Representative to the UN. Shea?
Well, good morning, everyone, and we're absolutely delighted to be part of the whole process of the LDC5. Basically, this is our bread and butter every day. I'm the representative of IOE, but just so you know, IOE is the largest global private sector network in over 150 members in 140 countries, but representing 50 million companies. Those companies are large and small, and we're committed to results. But when you start talking about SMEs, informality, equal pay, social protection systems, this is where our expertise lies. And so there's huge opportunities at this conference, but we want this to be action. We don't want this to be yet another conversation. And so we see there's a return on investment and opportunities, both for large and small companies, but also for us to come together to assist those in most need. Now, what is there? There's an incredible amount of untapped potential in these countries. Vibrant young population, huge talent, innovation, entrepreneurship, and a resilience. And so what we need as businesses, and many have spoken about this, is enabling environments, financing, digital connectivity, skills, etc. But what we're going to do, and we're doing this work right now, is in 26 of these countries, we actually have member federations, and we're researching what are actual needs of these countries and these companies and these businesses to ensure that we do move forward on the 2030 agenda. And so we're all about building partnerships and action. I would like to raise the issue that there are examples, and there are wonderful examples, and the garment industry was mentioned, but we also built a partnership with the unions, with global brands, with local employers, and brought them together in order in Bangladesh to assist those after the COVID breakout, to really make sure that those people who were most in need were receiving some compensation. And while we've managed through our German and EU colleagues to send out some $150 million to these workers, there's still much more to do. And it's not so easy to make the payments to people. And so these bottlenecks are something we need to discuss. We're bringing our employers' federations to the table, and we hope to really have a really honest dialogue with governments, but others all around the table, including resident coordinators, to really make sure we leave no one's behind. So delighted to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Shay, thank you. And the incredible role that your organization plays in this is incredibly important to us. Our next speaker is Mr. Anders Berlin, Director of the LDC Investment Platform, the United Nations Capital Development Fund. Anders.
Thank you, Frank, and good morning, all of you. Pleasure to be here. So UNCDF is the UN's Capital Development Fund, and you may ask yourself why a UN agency should get involved in investments and support of the private sector. Well, we think there are at least two good reasons why a UN agency should get engaged. First, today only 6% of the ODA that is used to mobilize private sector capital is directed to the least developed countries. So 94% is directed to countries that are better off. And UNCF wants to change this relationship. Secondly, when UNCF has operated in the investment space in the LDCs, we've found very, very few other players providing finance to the missing middle. The missing middle is really the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And we also find very few players providing finance to investment in infrastructure at the municipal level in LDCs. So these two areas are sort of the sweet spot of UNCF when it comes to finance. And we rarely see the IFIs in this space. The tickets size are too small, and for domestic banks, risk is too high, and we neither see DFIs or impact investors for various reasons. So these are the two reasons why I think UNCDF wants to contribute to higher investments into the LDCs. Relatively little ODA is used to engage private sector capital, and very few investors focus on the missing middle. So just to remind you, the UNCDF was mandated already in the 1960s to work with investments in LDCs. And we're now taking a step to increase this offering to these countries, not least to help achieve the SDGs by 2030. Let me give you one example how we work. So in Uganda, UNCDF ran a challenge fund, and one company seeking finance to expand was Aptec. Aptec is a solar business and registered in Uganda since 2012. They offer solar PV mini grids, solar street lighting, solar refrigerators, etc. In its first years of business, the focus was really on solar water pumping system. It first received a grant from UNCDF of 100K to develop its business in 17-18. It went well, and the business grew, backed by these UNCDF grants and some equity from the owner. In 2018, the company was experiencing cash flow constraints, in particular for larger projects. Since Aptec had not been able to secure any debt financing from domestic banks due to the required collateral or a sound credit history, it was very challenging for the company to expand. The company wanted to expand its product offerings to also include small solar pumping systems, pay and pump, as it's called, for smallholder farmers. UNCDF at this point provided a small loan of 250K to enable it to expand into pay and pump businesses, and also to help the company to prove to domestic financial institutions that this is a viable business. The business grew, and Aptec paid back the loan to UNCDF. And in 2020, Stanbic, a commercial bank, came in with 700K loan based on the credit history achieved by the company with UNCDF. And up till today, the company has kept growing and is now about to access international capital via UNCDF's network. We have a joint partnership with an impact investor out of Geneva. So this is one example, but UNCDF are working with similar investments in Tanzania, Ethiopia, Malawi, Burkina Faso, PNG, Fiji, and many more countries. UNCDF has therefore launched a facility called Bridge for this very purpose of financing the missing middle in LDCs. With this facility, UNCDF wants to play a very catalytic role for private capital to come in, using subordinated loans, guarantees, and other instruments to incentivize less risk-prone capital to invest in LDCs. Thank you, and I stop here.
Thank you, Anders. I know that certainly in some of the broadband investments we've made in Africa, the missing middle and the incredibly high cost of capital has slowed very successful enterprises from being able to scale. And so I think that, addressing the missing middle throughout this is a really important step to letting people scale up who've already demonstrated their success. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Annette Semu-Wamba, the Deputy Executive Director of the Enhanced Integrated Framework Executive Secretariat. Annette, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us. The EIF housed here at the World Trade Organization to join this very, very important forum, and more specifically the advisory group. And we look forward to contributing to the discussions. We are a partnership program exclusively focused on strengthening institutional and productive capacities of LDCs. And we provide catalytic funding and technical assistance. And I really hope that we can listen to other partners around the table to see what contributions we could bring. We have projects in almost all the 46 countries, and including in the conflict afflicted countries. And I'll speak to three key points. The first one is on leveraging private sector investment in thematic or strategic sectors. The EIF provides catalytic funding, and we've seen excellent results in the form of enterprise growth, jobs, and incomes. And in some countries, we've observed additional funding leveraged from the private sector to scale up our work. And we are really keen to see these results in many other countries. And we'd be keen to look at ways to unblocking the challenges that impede the private sector from further investments in countries such as Mali, in Guinea, and in a few others. It's been really, really excellent to see the private sector complement the EIF countries, but it's not happening to the extent that we would like. And that's why we'd be really, really keen to engage and to see how to encourage those investments. We all know that aid for trade resources are shrinking, and we must therefore look at alternative sources of funding to invest in these strategic sectors. The second point I'll speak to is partnerships, and I think I've had this raised already by previous speakers, but I think it's a really important issue that I would like to speak to as well. I cannot emphasize more the importance of partnerships and facilitated dialogues as well. And this forum that's been established for LDC5 is just one way of starting that dialogue and making sure that it lasts. We have a few examples of partnerships that have worked well, some of which are targeted to very thematic issues. For example, women economic empowerment. We have about 5 partners that we are working with, including ITU who are on the call, focused on very, very key vulnerable groups within the LDCs that we think require special support. We do provide resources, and from these partnerships, resources are invested, and together we see scale and we see impact. And so again, as the EIF would be keen to explore which of those partnerships that we could engage with. And my third point is on the need for evidence, and it's an issue that we've come across as very, very important. Some of you may be familiar with the work that we support in LDCs to prepare analytical work, these studies that we refer to as the diagnostic trade integration studies. These identify major constraints to business and trade competitiveness. And in some countries, these are the studies and the action plans derived from the studies that steer the countries towards which priority sectors to invest in, or which are the key issues that need to be addressed. And so we would like to explore again, and in engaging with the private sector, what elements can we strengthen in that analytical work, in that evidence that would then point to some of the key challenges that the private sector finds, and which key challenges therefore need to be addressed. So again, we would be very, very keen to engage on that front. And I've already heard from many speakers the need for this evidence. Many of the countries cannot prepare projects and require project preparation grants. Again, these are areas that we support the countries to address. So really keen to engage, to contribute, to discuss, and together to see how we can support LDCs on this journey to development and the SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annette. And I think we've heard several people in the conversations before this meeting, as well as during the course of this, talk about what are the aspects that are required for business, whether it's local entrepreneurs or regional companies or global brands, to be able to do business well, and what's it take to, what are the preconditions and the foundations that we need to create, from legal certainty to anti-corruption, to skills training and connectivity, the broad range of things. And I think these are really important things that we're looking forward to developing and discussing on the road to Doha. Our next speaker was scheduled to be Natalia Bayona, Director of Innovation, Education, and Investments at the World Tourism Organization. One of the 5 tracks will be on sustainable tourism. And I think it's some very interesting work has already been going on that track. But I understand that Natalia is on mission right now, and so literally on a plane, so she's not able to join us. And with that, I think just want to pass it back to Courtney for steps about the way forward. Courtney, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. John, as we have a little bit of time left, let me invite the representative of the ITU to take the floor. Doreen had to leave, but her colleague is with us and wanted to have an opportunity just to intervene on this. ITU.
Yeah, hello, Courtney. Thank you very much. Hello, John, as well. Thank you for hosting this very important gathering. So, John, you teed that well. You talked about connectivity. I mean, the theme of this brainstorming is how do we increase the opportunity for partnerships and investing in the LDCs. And I think all of the speakers, or many of the speakers, touched on the need underlying to have connectivity in place if we're going to be able to deliver whether it's digital financial services or the information flows, or frankly, create the conditions so that the SMEs can thrive. As many of you probably know, in the LDCs in particular, only 19, that's 19, less than 20% of people are meaningfully connected. And that includes also businesses, of course. And we know that the SMEs are at the heart of driving the next stages of growth. So for the ITU, we're the UN specialized agency on ICTs. And as Doreen Bogdan, the director of BDT, mentioned in the advisory group call just preceding this, we have launched a platform called Partnership to Connect Digital Coalition, which hopefully many of you are part of, and including the UN-OHRLLS, and as well as the Office of the Tech Envoy. I don't know if we have a representative from the Office of the Tech Envoy on the call, but we believe now is the time, with the COVID crisis, which highlights how critical connectivity is, with the WTDC, the ITU's World Telecom Development Conference happening next June, where ministers and regulators from all around the world will be gathering. And of course, with LDC5, what a perfect timing that we really make a global effort to promote meaningful connectivity and digital transformation in the LDCs. And so with the Partner Connect Coalition, we offer this platform to everyone on this call, including in partnership with Courtney, your team, to make pledges, to make commitments, and to move action to advance this. And I'll just end by saying, we don't want this to be a passive platform, and the ITU is not going to be here just to hold the space to allow people to make pledges. We're also the technical agency of the UN on ICTs. And so our relationships is with the ministers of ICT, with the regulators. And as all of the business people here know, if you're going to make an investment, you need to have the policy and regulatory framework to support that. And so the concept of P2C, the digital coalition, is we want to have pledges and commitments, but not just from private sector and civil society, but also from governments. We want governments to step up and make pledges related to their policy. Maybe they will promote infrastructure sharing, or they'll release unused spectrum for everyone to use so that we can promote the connectivity that allows everyone to use the connectivity to advance. So that's what I would welcome and invite those to get involved with Partner to Connect Digital Coalition. Thank you very much. Back to you, Courtney and John.
Thank you, Alex. And that's such a central point that you make, that the responsibility and the role of government is central to what we're trying to accomplish. And I don't think it's a point that has been illuminated enough when we have these sorts of discussions about the developmental needs and challenges of LDCs. Let me thank all the presenters as well for sharing their views on how we can ensure that this private sector forum stimulates the process for undertaking transformative change in these vulnerable countries. And that is our aim. What we're aiming to do is to ignite a transformative developmental process, not just to stage an event in Doha. We heard from Shay from the IOE that we want this to be about action and building partnerships. We cannot afford for it to be just another conference. As has been widely recognized, these countries are indeed vulnerable, but they also represent a huge opportunity for growth and for development. However, their potential to become positive agents for change in the post-COVID world, I think that potential can only be realized with your help. And so, we're excited to have engaged Microsoft, MasterCard, Accenture, Liquid Technologies, the USCIB, and the International Organization of Employers from the private sector as key partners in shaping our private sector agenda in Doha. But this is only a start. It's our hope that many of you that are listening in from the private sector will also be with us in Doha to kickstart the decade of opportunity for lasting change in these countries. We want to welcome you to Doha, to LDC5, where the world will be represented at the levels of head of state and head of government. And I say the world as this is not a conference of LDCs only. It is an international conference at which all countries are invited. We want to ensure that everyone who can play a role in Doha is able to do so. And so we will work with you to make sure that every company that wants to be there is able to travel and to actively participate at Private Sector Forum. Today, we are launching the application process for how private sector companies that wish to travel to Doha can submit their expressions of interest. And so what I will do now is to hand things over to my colleague, Thomas Gonzalez from my office, to explain a little bit about the next steps regarding the accreditation and registration process. Thomas, over to you.
Thank you, USC, and good morning, everyone. We have indeed just launched the accreditation process for all stakeholders, private sector, civil society, the United Nations organizations, for everyone. Accreditation gives you the freedom to designate representatives to travel to Doha and participate at the conference. And it also make entities that like to participate, private sector entities and others, to be able to access the actual venue. And I think, as the USG just indicated, this would be an important moment where you have the opportunity to discuss with all stakeholders and exchange views and have this cross-fertilization exchange of ideas. So the accreditation, where organizations, including private sector organizations, express interest in designating representatives to travel to Doha, is now open. We will circulate the link to all the participants of this call after this meeting. And it's open until the 15th of November, 2021. Our office We will circulate our contact details, and our office is here to facilitate this process. So any question, any help that you need from us, we are available to make it as smooth and easy as possible for you to be able to go to Doha. Once this list of organizations that are interested in being accredited is compiled, we will share it with the President of the General Assembly. And then a registration process will be open where organizations that have gone through this accreditation process, that have expressed interest in participating in Doha, will be able to designate representatives. And this process of registration will be open until the 2nd of January 2022. But of course, we are flexible, and we will be there to help you to accommodate and make sure that everyone that wants to be in Doha is able to participate and access the UN territory there once the conference is, the space of the conference is set up smoothly. As I said, we will circulate all this information in writing and also our contact details. So any question, any suggestion that you have, we will be able to respond, and we will be here to help you. Thank you, USC. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Thomas. We do have just a few minutes left. I know we were trying to get through to Natalia from the UN-WTO World Tourism Organization earlier. I don't know if Natalia is now able to join us. Let me just give her that opportunity in case she is able to join at this time.
Hi, do you listen to me well?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
So it's my pleasure to be here with you. And of course, as Director of Innovation, Education, and Investments of the World Tourism Organization, creating public order to empower the Sustainable Development Goals in the tourism field. What we have done? First of all, part of our strategy focused on innovation, education, investments has been key in terms of working together on everything related to create, first of all, a startup innovation ecosystem where governments, private sector, top tech companies as Amadeus, Google, MasterCard, among others, are giving us the different fundraising to create innovation challenges, startup competitions, innovation forums, and of course, to build the tourist innovation network and to help to raise funds to accelerate startup growth. As of today, I have to say that after 3 years and a half, we have helped the winners from more than 20 challenges, worldwide speaking, to raise more than $74 million. And of course, those entrepreneurs have been key in terms of bringing everything related to creating pilot projects with the public sector, with the corporates, and of course, those big tech companies has been key to strengthen all the efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, I have to say that our department has been really helpful in order to create an innovative mindset, not only inside the UNWTO, but also to our member states to build this good practice and to improve in a national and in a regional level how public-private partnerships can be held in terms of having a specific and pragmatic results when it comes to tourism innovation. So of course, we are super glad to be here to learn from you and to exchange different practices that can help tourism rebound again. In terms of investments, of course, is the same. We have been creating different movements to foster venture capital investments to different national and regional startups. But of course, before our networking of more than 200 venture capital investors, I have to say that we have different national and international connections where we have helped member states to strengthen the opportunities to build a doing business plan with private sector as well. So of course, As I already said, working with the private sector has been key to achieve specific and pragmatic goals. And today we are proud to still continuing achieving and helping to achieve the SDGs through this kind of partnership.
Thank you very much, Natalia. You know, as we had heard from John earlier, sustainable tourism is a critical component of the key areas of focus that will be addressed at the Private Sector Forum. So thank you for that. And let me just say, with respect to Thomas's presentation, I hope the information that he provided on accreditation and registration has been helpful. I think Thomas has posted the website where you can get further details on that process. That has been posted in the chat. So let me just leave it here now, colleagues. Once again, let me thank all the presenters and participants for joining our discussion today. And well, all that left for me to say is really that I look forward to seeing many, if not all of you, at Doha next January. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.